So now that you're an expert on variables, let's go and look at arrays, which are an extremely important way of storing information. If, by the way, you're getting a little antsy because we haven't made an app in a while, don't worry, you've just got 2 videos to go, and then we're going to go back to Android Studio and use all of the Java knowledge that we've built so far to make a higher or lower guessing game. So just hold on till then. And let's take a look at arrays first. So we met the array a few videos ago when we saw this, so string and then square brackets, but I kind of brushed over exactly what it was. So let's look in more detail now. Let's say we wanted to store a bunch of numbers. So if, for example, I wanted to store the first few prime numbers, that is the numbers that have no factors other than 1 and themselves, then this is going to be a bunch of integers, whole numbers, so I'll call it int, and then I use the open and close square brackets to say that I want this to be an array of integers. And then I'll call it prime numbers, so just in the same way as we did with variables. So this is saying we want to create an array of integers which is called prime numbers, and then we use curly brackets to store all of the numbers that we want to store. So the first prime number is 2, second one is 3, the third one is 5, and then 7, 11, and we'll do one more, 13. There we go. So that's it. That's our array of prime numbers, and it is just a collection of, in this case, integers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. So that's all an array is, but you can imagine that's a very useful construct for us. If we wanted to have a list of images that we've downloaded from Instagram, or a list of our users, or anything like that, we can store it in an array, and we can store as many different items as we need to there without having to create new variable names for each of them. So let's just print that to the console and see what the system does with it. So system.out.println prime numbers. Oh, and I'll need a semicolon there as well. It's easy to forget because it's a curly bracket. So we get a collection of strange symbols here, which isn't very useful for us. This is because prime numbers is an array and not a string. And so trying to print it as a line doesn't work. We get this strange object instead. And let's try and display the second member of the array. So prime numbers and then square brackets with a 2 inside. Now see if you can anticipate what number that is going to display. Which of these numbers will get pushed to the console? It's the number 5. That might be slightly unexpected for you if you haven't worked with arrays before. So it's actually the third number, even though we've got a 2 here. And that's because the first is considered to be the 0th number in the array. So if we put prime numbers and then square brackets and then 0, then that will give us the 2. There we go. So there's our 2. So we've got 0 is the number 2, and then 1 would be 3, 2 would be 5, 3 would be 7, etc. So that's a common starter error, is to get confused as to which member of the array that you want, and forgetting that it starts at 0. So there are a few things that you can do with arrays. The first one is to find out how many items are in your array, and we do that using dot length. But this time we don't use the parentheses. So let's take a look, and that should give us the number of items in the array, which is 6. Excellent. Now the main limitation with arrays as we're using them here is that they can't be altered, that is, have elements added to them or taken away from them after they've been created. Now that's probably a deal breaker for most of the arrays that we'd want to use. So we're going to move quickly on from this primitive array type to the list type, which does allow you to add and take away and do a lot of other things to your arrays. So in order to be able to use the list type, we need to import a number of different frameworks, and And to save us importing all them individually, we can use java.util and then .star. And that will import a number of different frameworks that will give us all the methods that we need and the classes that we need to create our lists. So let's get rid of the code that we had before and see how we create a list. It's slightly more complicated than creating an array. So now to create our list, we write down the type first of all, which is a list, and then the name. So I'm just going to call it a list with a lowercase l. And this time we set it equal to a new array list. So this is a different way of creating an object. Instead of setting it equal to the value that we actually want, we just create the type that we're going to use. So we're going to use an array list. There are various other list types, but we'll stick with this one for now because it does everything that we need. So we're just creating a new array list. And this construct is something that we'll see again and again later in the course when you're creating variables of certain types. You can use it with strings and other variables that we've seen before as well. And then to add items to our list, we use the add method. So list.add, and if we wanted to add the first item in our prime numbers list, then we would add a 2. And then we do the same, 3. And the next one is a 5. I'll stop there. Feel free to add some more if you like, but those are the first 3 prime numbers. They'll do. And then if we wanted to print one of those to the console, we'd use system.out.println, and this time we'd use list.get, and then we give the number of the item that we want. So quick challenge for you, if we wanted 3, what number would we use here? I hope you said 1, because this would be 0, this is 1, this is 2, etc., etc. So list.get and then 1 will give us the second item in the list. So that should print 3. There we go. So now that we've got this slightly more complicated setup, we can do much more powerful things. So we can add items. Of course, we can take them away as well. So to do that, we use list.remove, and then we give the index of the number that we want to remove. So let's say we want to remove this 3 here. This has an index of 1 because 0, 1, and 2. So we'd use list.remove and then 1. And just have a quick think, what is this going to output now? Let's run it and see if you were right. The answer is 5, because this array has now lost the middle item. So it's only a 2 and a 5. So the item with index number 1 is the 5. And just to prove that to you, I'll show you how we can actually display the whole of this list rather than just one particular item. We use a function that we have seen before. That's toString. So that just converts our list to a string so that we can put it in the console and see what's in there. So there we go. So the items in the list are now just a 2 and a 5. All right, quick challenge then. Can you create a list of 3, say, countries, and then remove an item from that list and add a different one in? So create a list of 3 countries, remove one, add it in, and then display it in the console. Good luck. All right, hope that went well. Let's create our list. So I'll call it countries, and that's going to be a new array list, just like that. And then we'll add our countries one by one. Countries.add. So I'll put England, and then let's add another one. So I'll keep local. So Scotland, and then Wales. Okay, I think while I'm here, I'm just going to check that that's all worked okay. So system.out.println and then countries to string. Okay, so let's just make sure that's created it. There we go, England, Scotland, Wales, fantastic. So let's remove Wales. So we do that using countries, remove, and then I want to remove, that's the 0th one, that's the first one, that's the second one, so number 2. Remove 2, and then finally countries, add, and let's put Ireland there, as we're staying local. Alright, there we go. So England, Scotland and Ireland. So we've created our array, we've removed an item from it, and we've added one in its place. The last thing I want to show you in this video is maps, which work in similar ways to lists, but something is crucially different about them. Let's find out what it is. So let's get rid of our work on lists. So maps, we've already imported everything that we need for that because we've imported all of the Java util frameworks. We create a map in exactly the same way as we create a list. So I'm going to call it map in lowercase. And so it's a new something, but it's not an array list, it's a hash map. So we create that like that. And now we put an item into this map, and we do that using put. And now you'll see the difference between the hash map and an array or a list. So I'm going to add, for example, father Rob. So I just get my syntax right. There we go. So what this does is it maps father to the value Rob. So whereas arrays are lists that go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the index, here we can map a certain index to a certain value. So now if we take system out print line, if I want to print a particular value, I would use map.get and then the key, which is father. So let's just make sure that that returns Rob as we would expect. So you can see what we're doing. We're linking father to Rob, and then you can imagine what the next might be. So mother, in this case, we'll have as Kirsten, and we can again use the toString function if we want to look at the whole of a map. So map.toString. Let's take a look. So we've got mother is Kirsten and father is Rob. And again, we can use remove. Not that I would ever want to, of course, but if we wanted to remove an item for this from this map, we would just use the key, just like that. And then that would remove that item, and we're left with just the first item. And finally, as with arrays, we can use map.size to tell us the number of items in the map. So in this case, just 1. So that's as far as we're going to go with arrays, lists, and maps for the moment. But later on, we'll see how to do things like loop through an array or a list or a map, find specific values, and a lot more. Now we're getting close to being able to build our higher or lower app, but we need one more important programming construct, and that is the if statement. And we'll look at that and how it works in Java in the next video.